I'm just going to do a little video, a little insight today. And again, I've been talking about universal laws the last couple of days, and that's still very sort of like at the forefront of where I'm at the moment. However, I just wanted to sort of like, I've been sitting here this morning and I've just been listening to a few things. And I know that it's sort of like everybody's heard of like Diana Cooper, who talks about unicorns, talks about Atlantis, talks about sort of like angels, fairies, and all those kind of things. And although I sort of like I've always known of angels, and I've always sort of like doing healing. I've always been around angels. I work with them. I work with the energies, and as being a healer, like being a spiritual healer, which I did like for about 10 or 15 years, like in churches. And I've always sort of like done this kind of stuff on videos. And I've just been sort of like listening to a guy called Tim Wilde, and I didn't know who he was. I just like the other day I was on YouTube and I got directed to him about practical ascension, and he was talking about the ascended masters, and obviously all that kind of stuff I've been connected into anyway, so it's very much sort of like linking in. But again, it's interesting because when you start to really sort of like sit in that energy frequency and that vibration, you start to really realize it's like I created a group 2011, 2010, so it's like 10, 12 years ago, called Atlantis Reclaimed on Facebook, and I used to post on it. And I didn't know why I was creating that group at the time. I just felt like that's what I needed to do. But I know that Tim Wilde and Diana Cooper talk about Atlantis, and they talk about all that kind of time. And this time's very much sort of like now synchronizing with Lemuria and like the fifth dimensional reality, and Atlantis Reclaimed was all about sort of like bringing back lost knowledge, lost wisdom, lost abilities, and lost gifts. And they're all talking about that kind of stuff now. It's all being talked about, but it's all becoming very much. So it was how I feel, and how I feel about it today is like, I mean, I was looking at it and I was just sitting there. I was like, this Tim Wilde is talking about stuff that probably I've been talking about as well, and somebody else has been talking about, and then I just started to think about that this Tim Wilde is obviously doing a fantastic job. He's talking about like crystals, he's talking about like crystal skulls, he's talking about Atlantis, he's talking about all these things, and it's like they were talking about the uniqueness, and they were talking about each of us having a purpose, having a role, bringing our own unique wisdom through. And but also I was thinking about sort of like this person's out there and they're doing all these kind of workshops. They're doing this about angels. They're doing about ascended masters. But it's also sort of living in a very sort of like a balanced 3D reality and 5D reality. And this is one of the thoughts that was coming through to me this morning. And I've talked about this a couple of times this morning. So this is kind of something that I know that I need to be talking about as well. Is like the 3D reality. Like I posted on something this morning, and there's a post called like Telos, and it's through like Mount Shasta in over in America, which is where they say Lemuria is actually the fifth dimensional reality or vibrational frequency of Lemuria is actually housed underneath this mountain on the planet here now. And then it's like it's in a fifth dimensional reality, but it's like connected here, but it's like in ethereal realms, or the etheric sort of realms. And again, things like the Shambhala and other stuff like that, which is stuff they're talking about now. So yeah, so they were talking about sort of like fifth dimensional reality, and a 3D reality. I was losing train of thought for a second there, but it's interesting because I know I want to go back to that because I was losing the track when I was sitting there. I was going off somewhere and I felt like the energy was dropping, so I need to come back. What I was going to talk about is 3D reality and 5D reality. What I was talking about was, in my life, I feel like I have two jobs, right? I have a part-time job, which is my 3D reality, which is where I go to work every day, and I earn money just to pay the bills. And then there's this that I do, which is my full-time job, which is a transformation, transmutation, expressing, passing on knowledge, passing on wisdom for awakening, for transformation. And it's to everybody, and it's like we're all brothers and sisters of light. We're all a family of light, and this is why we're doing it. This is what we're here for. So my job, my purpose is to do this, and my job is to do that. But obviously we're still very much connected to a 3D reality. So we're still using money, we're still using materialism, we're still using all those kind of things. So the thing is, it's about trying to get that blend and balance. So some people are working from a 5D reality, or connecting or moving towards that fifth dimensional reality, and bringing and housing and anchoring that energy, but then also trying to align it with their 3D reality, what they do every day. And it's about trying to get that balance, it's trying to bring that in. And this is where some of the stuff that I've talked about in my sort of like some of these videos I feel really important. I keep talking about integration. I think this is what the masters and the beings are saying. They're saying that a five-dimensional frequency and reality that you awaken to is about sort of integrating it, but it's not even integrating, it's being it. There's no, I say integration, but they're saying being. So the integration is not the right word. I was trying to say it in a practical way about integrating it, which means bringing it into your daily life, embodying it, living it. And this is what they're saying, but it's about being it. So again, this comes back to the universal laws of vibration, where it comes back to saying about vibrating as this being, this consciousness of light, this energy of light, this soul, this source energy. And once you start to do that, you dissolve, and you dissolve the 3D reality, and you start to live a 5D reality. This is what they're telling me, this is the blueprint. You start to live a 5D reality, and when you start to live a 5D reality, then you awaken to your soul purpose, you awaken to your soul, what you're supposed to be doing here, and then you start to live it. And this is what's happening with some of these people that are actually in the public eye, and they're living in a 5D reality, and they're dissolving the 3D reality. Although it's like, we're still very connected, because the whole consciousness of the planet is still very connected to materialism. The outer world is very connected to you know, to social media, you know, the shopping, all that kind of stuff, which is very 3D outer reality. But they're also showing me about turning the dial. So they're showing me like a radio dial. As you turn it and you turn the frequency, and they're turning that up at the moment, and as you turn that frequency up, then you attune and you align, and then that actually brings a higher frequency into your own life, and then that dissolves the 3D reality, and then it starts to create the new blueprint of the 5D reality. And this is what they're showing me at the moment. And how I feel when I think about this is I feel very emotional, because I feel the emotion that's coming through is this connection, this harmony, this peace, this love. Because the 5D reality is about harmony, peace, love, balance, truth, understanding, wisdom, creativity, creation, co-creation. All those things spiritually that we talk about are very much in this kind of reality. So again, I'm having shifts, and I've been directed to listen to stuff. This Tim Wild was talking about crystal skulls, and I've never really understood those. They talk about crystal skulls. I've listened to stuff about Atlantis before, about crystal skulls and how they're used. They were used in Atlantis in the Great Chamber, and there was like 12 of them, and then there was a Master Skull. And I've read all of that, and I've read about crystal chambers, and I remember reading Mona Rolfe, The Sacred Vessel, and that book. If you ever get the chance to read that, just read it. It'd probably be quite hard to find now because it's a few years old, but it absolutely blows your mind away. This medium that goes back to Atlantis, and she talks about her vision and her time in Atlantis, and what happened between Atlantis and Lemuria, and how Atlanteans split the soul and into like the divine feminine and the masculine, and they did this through crystal chambers. And before that, Lemuria was these universal light beings that were like really tall in stature, but were androgynous and had no sex, or had no sort of, hadn't split the divine and the male and the female energy. And I just found that really, really interesting when I read it. But yeah, so we're shifting all the time, and this is what this is about at the moment. It's about creating that blueprint. You've got that sacred blueprint of the fifth dimensional reality. We've all got those codes in ourselves. They're all being activated. Those blueprints are now being activated, so we can start to use them. We've all got those blueprints in us. They will not activate until you start to get the right frequency. And this is what I feel is being said to me today. It's about this sacred geometry, or this sacred geometry, the blueprint of like creation and stuff, and it all links into vibrations again. It links to the universal law of oneness, the universal law of vibration, and it also links to again the universal law of not correspondence, universal law of where where you sort of like you're in your outer worlds that create and are intertwined, and they're interconnected. So it's about sort of like going inside, um, and sort of creating and living that blueprint and being it, and then it will out on the outer world, it will create the reality on the outer world. It will create, you've got that blueprint, you've got that spark, you've got the divine essence within you. It's about awakening that essence again. There's a lot of this stuff going on, and it's about us sort of awakening to it and starting to really start to bring this stuff forward. But like the crystal skulls are really interesting, that he was talking about crystal skulls as housing a consciousness supercomputer. I get that. I get there's frequencies and they hold frequencies, and in those frequencies are information, and when they're released, that wisdom, that information is released because you're in that frequency. Your universal mind can then actually connect into it and receive that information, but it can't do that until you're on that frequency. So it's really important. So yeah, it's really sort of like important at this time that we start to really dissolve that 3D reality, and then obviously we start to live into that fourth and fifth dimensional reality, which is what we're moving towards now, which is what we've got this blueprint in. And this is why these masters, these angels, these beings are activating us at this moment, is to try and get us to awaken to that. This is the purpose of ascension. He talks about anchoring, which makes sense. Anchoring the energies into yourself and into the onto the planet. Um, I don't know how I feel about anchoring. I mean, a lot of people talk about anchoring. Is this something that works for me? I'm not sure. Because when I feel about anchoring, I feel like the vibration and the information and the essence is in me, and if I go into it and I connect to it, and I connect to that light within inside, then that expands. So I'm not anchoring, because actually what I'm doing is I'm expanding, and as I expand and the energy and the frequencies change and the consciousness changes, it's already anchored, because basically I'm vibrating as it, and when I vibrate as it, it's anchored already, because I don't need to anchor something that I already am, because I'm connected into that I am presence of self, of that higher self and that source. So for me, it's like I don't anchor it. I suppose anchoring in a way, so like I'm being sort of like told to explain it a different way. So for me, he's talking about anchoring. So anchoring to me, because I'm very literal in my head, right? You'll find this. I'm a very literal person, so things are very literal in my head. So anchoring is bringing something down, yeah, into you, yeah. I said I don't see that. I see that the information and the insight and the essence is in you, and once you open up to it and you expand it and then you vibrate as it, then you start to embody it. And then if you embody it, then you don't anchor it, because your I am presence is already here, and you're here in this moment. So you're not anchoring it because you're already it. You can't anchor something that you are, because you're already it. So it's about just living it and feeling it, and you anchor it by recreating it every day. That's how I'm being told to explain it. Recreating it is how you anchor it. So every time that you make, or you consciously take time to consciously create that vibration, or feel that vibration, feel your essence, then you anchor it. So it's just interesting to see that, because I'm being shown the heart now, and I'm being shown like to anchor it. They're talking about like anchoring is like through the heart, but to me it's like the heart is what you go through to connect that essence to the essence and that source, which is your centeredness. And that centeredness is the anchoring, because what you do is when you start to really awaken to your essence and your higher vibration and your light frequencies, and the light within you, the source energy, is anchored, because you're centered, because you're being. You're not being, because you're vibrating as I am presence, as a being, as a creative, co-creative being. So you're anchoring it in that way, and you're anchoring it in your heart, because I can feel it just sitting in there. It's a massive ball of light. It sits in there, but it also comes straight through my third eye as well. My third eye is shooting light out of it as I start to talk about this right now. So I know it's giving me insight, it's giving me vision, it's giving me clarity of mind, it's activating and connected to my universal mind, but it's also connected to my heart. And I've just been directed as well to talk about the heart center is around And your heart center's connected. It connects your consciousness, but it connects your universal mind. So once you're connected in your heart center, that's why I'm feeling the light come out of my third eye, because now it's activating my universal mind. So I'm seeing like with universal clarity and light and energy. But also I feel behind my actual physical body, I feel like behind my eyes is that there's complete light. It's like I was like, I feel like I'm complete light. A light energy has been like activated as I start to connect into this. I mean, I talk about things like that in this way because I'm a clairsentient. I sense things and feel things, and that's how they've always worked with me. I have to have a feeling, and then I build energy from that feeling, and then it builds up. I don't always see, but I feel and I sense, and when I sense and I feel, then the visions come after that. Then they give me impressions on my energy, on my physical body, on my energy centers, because I've always worked as an energetic being, like with healing, with reading. Everything comes from those senses, from that sense. So again, the information today is dissolving and activating your fifth dimensional blueprint, and this is what they've been talking about with the vibrations and the universal laws and the light frequencies and the light codes and the activations within me. They've been talking about that. This is what they've been talking, the masters saying activate them, because once you activate them, then you reunite with those universal teachers, the universal beings, those universal teachers, the angels are all on that. They all will come in through that fifth dimensional reality. They will become more present. They'll become more within our lives, and we will start to then be able to act to connect to them and get that information, gain that information, shift the whole planet, and become part of that universal community that we haven't been for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, which is the point of the ascension. And this is what's going on now. So that's the insight for today.